Did you know that every country has a national dish? Let's travel to Uganda and make their national dish, which is called a Ugandan Rolex, and it is spectacular.
Just by the name, I'm intrigued.
And it has nothing to do with a watch, in case you're wondering.
I was wondering.
I knew you would.
I was like, Rolex? I can welcome that home into my house?
The first thing we're gonna do to make this Ugandan Rolex is make the chapati, which is a flatbread that goes on the bottom. So a Rolex is basically, the name comes from the fact that it's a rolled up omelet flatbread type of experience.
Ooh.
Okay? So normally I'm like, when it comes to making things like doughs and whatever, sometimes I'm in the mood and sometimes I'm not.
It's all about mood.
So I'm like, sometimes I'm like, is there a shortcut? But for this, I wanted to get the authentic experience and I wanted to make the chapati from scratch, and it is surprisingly easy.
Is there a shortcut?
Well, you could always use, like, it wouldn't definitely not be authentic, but you could use a tortilla, but that's thinner.
No.
It's too thin. It's not gonna be right. So,
And you're not gonna have the pride of you getting in there with your hands like this, making the dough yourself.
yes. So it's really, really super simple. It's a dough that doesn't require any yeast, so it's not gonna rise. You want it to stay flat.
Cool.
That's the trick to the chapati. It's nice because unlike a pizza dough, it doesn't require a ton of rest time. So since it isn't gonna rise, you just have to leave it for about 20 minutes. Let it do its thing.
Oh my, even better.
But the most thing that you're gonna need to do is get the guns out and get kneading. So you can use a mixer for this if you wanted to, but I like to do things from scratch, 100%. I know you do too, honey. You'll notice that when it's coming together, when it starts to be smooth and elasticy, when it's not at all sticky. So you'll go through like a sticky phase where you're like, do I need to add more flour? Don't add more flour, just keep it going. And before you know it, it gets nice and supple.
You need to just keep it going. There's many highs and lows with it throughout the process, and all of a sudden, on that like 50-second knead, you're like, it's starting to come around.
Yeah, you come out on the other side and you're like, we're there.
Yeah.
Okay, I made it.
It's like life.
Yeah,
it's like life itself.
Well, I don't know about coming out on the other side, but you're kind of just in the ground, but.
This took
That's
a
a different
very
video.
odd turn. Are we making chapati? Are we talking about death here?
Let's get back to the chapati. So we've got it kneaded to absolute perfection.
And that didn't take long.
About 10 minutes. Form it into a beautiful supple ball. And I like to tuck the underside underneath to make the top nice and pretty. And then put it into an oiled bowl. I've got some avocado oil in here. Make sure it's nice and coated in oil. And then you can use cling wrap, or I have a clean kitchen cloth that we're gonna just put on top. And then that's it. You just set it aside for 20 minutes. And in that time, I've got the griddle insert that we're gonna add into the Ninja Woodfire and let it start preheating, because this comes together surprisingly fast.
So you're gonna preheat it as the dough. Okay, this could be a during the week dough.
Yes, and while that's preheating, I'm gonna get to our egg mixture. So traditionally in a Ugandan Rolex, there's an omelet on the inside. So you would use standard eggs, but I'm using just a product called Just Egg. And to me, it's very, very similar to real eggs.
As a non-vegan, and I've tried many of the ingredients that Key cooks with that are vegan, Just Egg rocks.
It's fantastic.
I love my eggs. Don't get me wrong. It's actually very, very similar to like a scrambled egg.
It is. The texture is very similar.
Flavor,
I don't know.
Flavor's mild. It's obviously even scrambled eggs. That's a mild flavor. It's all about what you put into them.
Yes, and it's very similar in texture, in flavor, in consistency. It's like mind-blowing. If you've never tried Just Egg and you're plant-based, I would definitely recommend it.
It cooks in the exact same way.
And you're gonna see, it totally does. So the ingredients for a Ugandan Rolex is some red onion, some green peppers that we're chopping up very, very fine. You want these to all be finely minced here. And
good texture.
Yes, and traditionally when I make an omelet, I don't know about you, honey, but I will saute the vegetables first and then add the eggs.
Yep.
But in a Rolex, you don't do that. You add the vegetables right to the egg mixture.
Straight up.
Just straight up. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep this as traditional as possible here. And that really takes a lot of my power to not start adding things.
Especially when you think that you know, but oh, is that cabbage?
Yeah, so this is a little wedge of cabbage that was left. I wanted to buy it. But this is a leftover piece of cabbage from a cabbage that I pulled out of my garden. Then you'll notice how few ingredients we're actually adding into here. And it
doesn't get fresher than that.
It doesn't get fresher, and not a ton of cabbage, but just a little tiny bit. And we want to really finely chop it in here. And I think this is going to provide it with a lot of texture more than anything.
I'm just baffled that while you're doing this, the grill is preheating. The dough is not rising, but the dough is like getting ready. Like this is super quick.
Yeah, it's a very, very quick recipe. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this and how much I want to be eating these on absolute repeat. Well, it's one of those recipes that doesn't have a lot of things in it, but you're like, why is this so good?
Just by what's going into the omelet and the fact that it seems like it's not anything like a unique ingredient here. It's like your straight up standard veg, but I can just tell that's gonna be good.
Yes. So
but
surprisingly,
also different.
Yes. So surprisingly, there are some tomatoes that are going in here, which you might think like, is that going to make it too watery? That's not like, that's kind of weird to be adding to an egg mixture of an omelet, but that's what's traditionally in it. So then we're going to season it up with some salt and pepper. I also added a pinch of black salt, which is in the plant-based world going to provide eggs with that eggy flavor that everybody's used to, which is my only critique for Just Egg, is it doesn't have that eggy flavor.
Add a couple extra little squeezes in or like cracks in of tooths. That's what black salt is.
Yeah, if you want to go there. Yeah, it is. It does have a toot vibe to it. You don't want to add too much because it can get too tooty.
See, you don't want it to be ever too tooty.
No. Our dough has been sitting for the required amount of time.
This is crazy to me. Now you're ready to use it?
Yes, 20 minutes later, not even.
As a pizza dough expert and connoisseur, this is blowing my mind.
Me too, because it's so different. If you think that dough is a lot of effort, I think a lot of people think it's the rising time that takes the time. You gotta wait around.
Yeah.
But this is unlike that because you're not waiting around.
Ooh, and it's not elasticy. It's like you're rolling it out and it's staying there.
Yes, so you can use a rolling pin for this step, but I definitely choose to use my hands whenever I can.
Does it stick? Like, did you have to put down oil onto the cutting board?
No, since the bowl was oiled, you can see I'm oiling my hands and I'm oiling the actual chapati a little bit, because you'll notice now we're gonna take one end and roll it up. And you might be thinking, what are we doing? Why are we making?
This is where we're getting into the Rolex territory.
No, we're not. This is not the Rolex part. Okay? This is we're gonna roll this up because you'll notice now I'm snaking it around itself into forming this
I call that snailing.
It's good. It's like a snail shape.
It looks like a snail.
Yeah. So see, we form this snail shape, and we're gonna do that to the rest of them. And the reason we do this is because you don't have to take this step, but I recommend that you do.
Okay.
It's a 2-second step, because this is what's going to add a lot of flaky layers to
Why
your
would
chapati.
you not take the step?
Because if you want to just flatten it out, go ahead, you can flatten it out, throw it on the griddle, and it's going to be fantastic. But if you take that step, it is so flaky. And the oil in between, like you'll notice I've lightly oiled it, it does become ridiculously flaky, and you can see all the layers when you bite into it.
Okay, but when it comes to food, tell me if you agree with this. It's not necessarily just about flavor. A lot of the time, it is those textural things that make you go, ooh.
Yes.
So, like, I feel like this would be mandatory.
And in a dish like this, where there are so few ingredients, it's so simple, the technique does make all the difference. And having those layers in there, and having had it this way now, I would never not do the layers.
And like, this isn't taking you like 10 extra years to do this.
No.
Like, that step is quick, it's easy, it's not requiring any gadget or tool. Why not just do it?
No, absolutely not. So I didn't want any Woodfire flavor for this recipe. You absolutely could if you wanted to. I just chose not to. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is take those snails and get a rolling pin and then roll the dough out again. So that's where the layers now are in there.
That's gonna be a textural sensation.
And we're just flattening them out. We all know we know that they're there. You can't see them anymore.
Your mouth's gonna know that they're there because that is gonna be a textural sensation.
Yes. Now, traditionally, a Rolex is a lot bigger than what I'm making them, but since I'm making them on the Ninja Woodfire, I know the dimensions of the grill. I could have done them one at a time and made them, they're normally really, really big and thin and flat, but I wanted to do them 2 at a time, so I chose to make 4 smaller ones.
I like individuals. Individuals are like way better.
Well, the big ones are individuals too, but I wanted 4 smaller instead of 2 larger. So to spray the grill, we're using avocado oil because it's a high heat spray.
How do you do? I'm getting that exact one.
It's
that
amazing.
Brand, I'm not gonna give up on it yet.
No, it's there.
Maybe that brand. I've never bought that brand before. Where can you get that?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, well, next time you see it, get me one.
Okay. You just add the chapati literally 2 minutes
look
later.
At it bubbling.
Slightly bubbled, but you'll notice it hasn't risen at all. And then you just flip them over. Look at how non-stick that griddle is. It's perfect for a recipe like this where you don't want any stickage. Typically, this is made in a cast iron skillet, but this isn't traditional. This is my version, and I think it was pretty fantastic.
I already can tell that's going to be fantastic. It's thin, but not too thin. It has like some nice thickness still to it that it's good. There's going to be some chew there, but also crispy.
Yes. And you want to make sure that you're respraying in between. So watch here. It gets a little spattery. Ooh, okay?
Ooh!
And it made quite a mess, I will say.
These are individual omelets.
So the thing is, so now we're
there's a little bit of connecting bridge there.
and that's fine. So we're pouring the egg out onto the surface, and we're trying to create the same shape as we did with the chapati, roughly. It doesn't have to be identical. And I'm using the tongs here to just spread out the ingredients. You want this to be as thin as possible because we're gonna take this omelet, put it on a chapati, and that's what's gonna create our Rolex.
Know what I like that you're doing here?
What?
Not panicking.
No, look.
Yeah.
Okay, so see it?
Oh my goodness gracious.
It made a big mess. And you know what, I'm not mad at it though because it was so worth it.
No,
so
this does look worth it.
because the fan,
Ooh.
because there's a fan in here, it is blowing around the egg everywhere, which is fine though, because it doesn't matter. Once you flip it over, look at that nice brown exterior. Again, you're not panicking here, and you really need this non-stick surface.
Yes.
It made it a lot easier to do this.
Okay, this is like the definition of golden brown. That one didn't quite make it, but you're again not panicking,
No.
flattening it out still.
And look, so see how thin these are? This isn't a traditional omelet. You want them to be as thin as possible. And you'll see, look at how floppy they are. It's like a big crepe. So in order to build one, you just take your chapati, your warm chapati, take one of the warm omelets. Look at how thin. See, it's all about texture
Don't tell me
here.
you're gonna roll this.
And this is where we get the Rolex. So you take the chapati on the bottom part here, line them up as best you can, and you want to roll them nice and tight.
Ooh!
So traditionally inside, you might want to add some more tomato or some more cabbage, but I want to have it just as is because this is normally how it's served.
Do you have a dunker?
I do have a dunker.
Or is a dunker traditional?
I think there is some condiments that can be served with this, but since it is like a street food, it's normally just wrapped up in paper and given as is. But I was in the mood for some hot sauce.
Ooh.
Which I most always am. But look at how beautiful that is. If you look closely, you can see the layers in the chapati, and look at how thin the omelet. Look how thin the omelet is.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to see what this looks like going in there.
And you can see all those bright, colorful vegetables. I like to use a toothpick just to hold it because I wanted to cut it in
the
half.
bite shot. We need to see. I feel like the bite shot we're all experiencing. Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh, there was like some chewiness to it.
Okay, so the chapati does have it's like a springy chewiness to it. It's not crunchy, it's not soft, it doesn't have a crepe texture. It has a chewiness, and the omelet provides such a nice, salty, delectable flavor on the inside.
Were the veg salted?
I just salted the egg mixture,
Okay.
totally.
Okay.
So I like a heavy hand on the salt because again, in a dish this simple, you really want all the flavors to shine. So I had a really heavy hand on the salt here. Very salty.
Were the veg still crunchy?
No, they weren't. They were nicely cooked because they were in such a thin layer on the griddle.
Weird.
They weren't still crunchy. Everything was really, really cooked down nicely. And because while you're making the rest of the chapati, just put a cloth over top of them to keep them nice and warm. And as they sit, they soften a bit more. So you'll notice when I took them off the grill, they were a little bit hard, but they soften. And then when you put the omelet on, they roll so easy. I cannot get enough of these. I ate all 4 of them. All 4 of them.
Not all at once.
Not in the same
Oh,
sitting.
I was like, did you?
No.
I believe you if you did.
They were so good.
I'm saying they look good. I'm not saying that you got a hearty appetite, which she does.
They were phenomenal. I could not get enough of them. You know, sometimes at the end of a recipe, you're like, that was good, but I could take it in like a month or 2. I immediately wanted to buy the ingredients again.
No,
it was
what I
that
want
good.
to dunk in there?
What?
I don't know. This might seem a little bit weird. I want to go barbecue sauce in there. Give it a dunk into a barbecue sauce. I'm just like going
Okay.
for that right now. I'm not preggers.
Okay.
A lot of the time when I say these like weird food combos, people are like, oh, someone's preggers? No, but I think that would be delectable.
You know what I did do the next day?
What?
I made a homemade pesto and then I turned it into a pesto mayo. Cross-cultural, but it worked.
I instantly take back the barbecue sauce. Give me a pesto mayo, baby.
It was so good. I can totally see why this is the national dish of Uganda. And if you're curious to see what this tastes like, I encourage you to make these because it's such a unique dish.
I'm going to.
It is phenomenal. So simple, so easy to do, and such a winner.
We need to send this to someone who lives in Uganda and tell them, do you approve of the pesto mayo idea? Do you think that should be on the street food menu from now on? Because it is cross-cultural, but I think it goes.
I'm more curious to know if they approve of this plant-based version because the fact that this isn't plant-based, if you want to use 2 eggs, by all means, that's what you're supposed to be doing. But if you want to make it plant-based, I'm here to tell you can, and it's just as good.
I always like to say, is this the first one on the internet? I don't know why, but we always go to take credit. And
I hope.
9 times out of 10, it's not.